I wanted to show you what I'm doing here. I'm mounting the Motogadget inside the electrical box. The battery, of course, sits over here, and I want the Motogadget over on this side. That's going to leave lots of room for wires to come in from the bottom. I'd rather not have anything coming in from the top. That should all work out really well. But mounting this thing, I wanted to get a couple studs in there. And I'm sure there's better ways of doing this, but a way I came up with here, because I had the stuff available, I'm just gonna take this off for a second. I got the first one on and I'm happy with the result. As you can see, I've got a stud in there now, and I put the Motogadget in on that stud so I could mark the location of the second one. What I've done is I've used a 1032 bolt. This is an Allen head, and I drilled a hole. I measured the head of the bolt, the diameter, and I drilled a hole in the box here that was just slightly smaller than the size of the head of that bolt. Then with a nut and washer, I tightened it down and sucked this into the hole. What I did then is I TIG welded around the bolt and ground it down flush. And it's made a nice smooth surface there. I think that's going to be just great. A little wipe of a filler, smooth that out. It's going to look great with paint. And a couple of the reasons I wanted to do it this way, it makes a good solid mount, for one thing. The stud is welded in there really well. I'm not worried about, for the amount of torque it has to take, it'll be fine. The other thing though is, with this box painted, I didn't want to have to tighten a nut or have a bolt head on the outside of the box here. Paint, custom paint, you spend a lot of time on it and everything. Sometimes there's a lot of layers, you get into metal flake, it's a little bit thick, whatever, but it looks fantastic. But then you go and tighten a nut down on it, and guess what? It tears at it, and maybe it cracks it, and maybe your adhesion isn't quite as good as it should be between layers or something, and sure enough, you crack the paint, you make a mess of it where the nut goes. So on this, same reason I did the coil mount this way, is I didn't want to have to tighten anything down on the surface of the box if I could avoid it. That's what this is doing for me. I can tighten this down now. It's welded in there. Everything should be just fine. I'm going to record the steps now that I know the first one worked, and I'm not embarrassed to show you what I did. Now that I know the first one worked, I'll record the process, or at least some steps in the process, to show you how I put this in here. All right, back to you soon. Thanks. 304. With a measurement of 304 on the head of the bolt, the next closest size drill bit down is 19/64, which measures 296. So 296, 304, that should make just a nice snug fit to pull that bolt into there and use it as a stud. All right, I've drilled my 19/64 hole. It's quite close to the coil mount. This isn't going to be a real problem because I need to weld across here anyway. So I'm going to have to do a little grinding and stuff to smooth this out when I get it ready for paint. If anything, that'll just add some extra strength to what I'm doing, having it right up tight down there. The reason it came out there is just locating the Motogadget. I wanted a little bit of airspace up at the top of the box. It just, that's where it had to go. I took the bolt over to the grinder and I ground off part of the head. I don't need, I still need the hex to tighten it up if I need to, but I don't need all that depth, and anything extra here is just more stuff to grind off once I get the weld done. That drops in there. That 19/64 hole is really, really good. I'm going to put that in there, flip this over, just using a flat washer, just a standard flat washer on there, and just make sure it's lined up with the hole, and then just a regular old 1032 nut. And that is sucking in there really, really nice. That's going to be just great right in there. So I'm going to tighten this up, suck it in as far into the box as it will go, and then I'm going to go over, put a couple tack welds on it. I'll need to keep this in place, this nut and washer in place, while I get a couple tack welds on it, because I want it to stay straight up. I want it to be nice and straight. If I take that off, there's a chance that it could move when I'm welding it. I'll get a couple tacks on it, then I can take this off. It'll make the weld nicer. And I'm just gonna check the alignment here to see how I'm doing with the studs. And not bad. The Motogadget drops straight on there. Works pretty good. That's going to be nice. It's got clearance around the edges. Should be just fine. All right, I'm going to go do a little TIG welding. Back soon. Well, I think this worked out fairly well. There's my two studs inside the box. What I'm going to do, let's put the Motogadget in first. So the Motogadget just drops right onto those, real nice. And I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use a couple of these star washers, I don't know if you can see that, those guys, to make sure I get a good ground, because both of the mounting points that I used here are grounds for the Motogadget. There's also a separate battery terminal, which is that one right there, and of course the battery is going to be right here, so that'll be nice and close. So I'll use a couple of those star washers, get a real good ground through the stud. The nice thing here is that the box, because it's mounted through threaded bungs on the frame, up here and one on the backbone, I'll make sure that the surface that I use I'll use some star washers on the inside too, that's right, on the mounting bolts, and that will get me a really good ground between the box and the frame. The ground here will be to the box. It should all work really nice. Electrically, it should be real sound. And of course the battery, while we're here, if we kind of drop it in place, as I said, it's a nice snug fit. There we go. So with the battery in there and the Motogadget, I think that's a pretty nice setup. Gives a little weight to this box. And now, as I say, I can just bring my wiring in through grommeted holes at the bottom, seal them up real nice. I've got room in the bottom here, oil pressure gauge mounts there. I've got room at the bottom for the wiring to come through, and once the cover plate goes on, the cover plate here with the padding, that's going to hold that in place, but this will still have lots of air. We should be good. All right, I am going to try and figure out how to bend brass tubing. Show you why later.